Deep in the sunken valley of Ashina exists a swampy, acidic canyon. Inhabiting this area is a shroud of apes. Some of these apes are monkeys, who mimic the warriors of Ashina, wielding swords and muskets, and others are masterless shinobis, choosing to make this valley their home so they can hone their skills and learn from the monkeys within. Though an ape is no stand-in for a true master, and if they're not careful, these shinobi can find themselves becoming feral and violent, heading down the path of becoming shura. One of these apes is the bounding monkey of the sunken valley, later to become the sculptor of the dilapidated temple, Orangutan, who would later become the demon of hatred. The Sculptor, or Orangutan, is the first person that Wolf meets after losing his arm, as he's the man who dragged Wolf's wounded and unconscious body to the dilapidated temple and fit him with an old tool of his past. Though he seems uninterested in Wolf at first, as he seems to focus solely on carving statues, it becomes pretty apparent that deep down, the Sculptor has a soft spot for strays. And to understand why he is this way, we should discuss the history of the Sculptor and the meaning behind his names and design. The Sculptor, Orangutan, Sekijo, these are just some of the names attributed to this man. So we'll start by discussing the origin of his names in order, starting first with Orangutan, because Orangutan is likely a name that he chose himself, as he and a second shinobi who went under the name Kingfisher abandoned their original master to train in the sunken valley. They likely chose these names based off the animals around them, Kingfisher picking her name from the agile birds of the area, and Orangutan picking his from the brute monkeys of the area. And the two shinobis trained together and shared a very close bond, spending countless nights together drinking monkey booze and playing music, though Orangutan would leave the sunken valley at one point, assumedly out of boredom, but possibly being coaxed by another shinobi named Owl, given the two seem to have some sort of history. And he participated in the Warring States battle within Ashina, assumedly fighting on the side of Ashina, not only because it's likely what he considered his home, but later we see that Orangutan hated the Central Army and considers them the thieves. And with his skills, he was able to fight endlessly during the war, sating his hunger for battle, while Kingfisher remained watching after the valley herself. And it was around this time that Orangutan would discover a homeless orphaned girl, with her making her way across the battlefield, eyes dead set on the rice Orangutan was having for lunch. And here's where we see the origin of Orangutan's most kind habit, that being taking in strays. He felt bad for the girl and did all but adopt her. She would later grow up to become Emma, Lord Ishin's own guardian, and he cared for her like a daughter, all the while fighting in the Sengoku Jidai. Though while Orangutan was away, deep within the sunken valley, a new ape rose to dominance, a large immortal beast that would be referred to as the Guardian Ape. And in response to its rise, Kingfisher would attempt to kill the beast, but didn't only die in the process, but was eaten, assumedly being the one that left the massive sword in the Guardian Ape's neck. And once Orangutan was alerted of the fate of his partner, he felt a part of his humanity die, an inner hatred rising within him. Realizing how dangerous he was becoming, he dropped the little girl off in Ashina, where she was later adopted by the great Dr. Dogen. Then Orangutan began his aimless bloodshed, wandering from battle to battle, slaughtering anyone and everyone who stood in his way. This hatred was building in him until he started to go down the path of shura, which is a state of mind where someone becomes basically a vessel for Ashura of Buddhist mythos, where they obsess over violence, anger, hatred, wrath, and gaining an unquenchable lust for blood. And while descending into madness, he crossed blades with Ishin, the Sword Saint. And in this clash of blades, Ishin ends up taking Orangutan's arm, ending his descent into shura along with sparing his life. Ishin was never one to waste potential, and he brought Orangutan to his greatest doctor, this being the same man who adopted Emma, Dogen. Dogen saved Orangutan's life, and Ishin gave him a new name, Sekijo, which is a portmanteau of one-armed and orangutan, a similar naming theme he would use to give Wolf the title of Sekiro. And while recovering from his loss of arm, Sekijo would work with Dogen, finding some peace in sculpting and creating toys for Emma like spinning tops. Though after a while, Dogen would come to Sekijo with a brand new project, one probably issued to him by Ishin himself, and it was thanks to this project that Sekijo would remain armless no more. He was gifted a shinobi prosthetic, which is a mechanical arm designed specifically to use shinobi tools. And though the first few prototypes were utter failures, Dogen managed to make a tool of untold destruction, and with it, Sekijo would take up a new mantle in protecting Ashina, this being the Bounded Monkey of the Sunken Valley, which was a name attributed to him both due to his shinobi name of Orangutan, but also due to his frantic and wild fighting style that he picked up from the Sunken Valley, alongside how he used shinobi tools like the monkey axe, not using it to cut, but more so swinging it like a hammer to shatter defenses. And it's through the shinobi prosthetic that Sekijo began his second bloody descent down the same dark path he was on before. Killing became easier, battles became bloodier, but he wasn't falling to shura this time. No, it felt much different. Welling inside him was an intense hatred of the countless lives that he had stolen, and Ishin was taking notice. And he had signed Emma, the girl who Sekijo saved and basically viewed as a daughter, to watch after Sekijo and cut him down if he ever became anything other than a man. And after inventing the living force technique, Sekijo retired, considering that going too far, and he felt this flame of hatred welling within his heart, and he looked to atone in some way. So he moved to the dilapidated temple, far from everyone else, and took on his final name of the Sculptor. And it's here he sat, carving a statue of the Buddha endlessly in a vain attempt to sate the flames dwelling within him, all the while Emma standing there vigilantly watching him, though they both knew that carving the Buddha wouldn't be enough. No matter how hard he tried, he could carve Buddha for eternity, and nothing would sate the incarnation of wrath dwelling within him. His humanity was too far gone. Though he kept to this fool's errand, distracting himself from his own anger. And during this time, the sculptor would stumble upon Wolf, near death and missing an arm. And just like Emma on that fateful day, the sculptor took Wolf in, dragging his near lifeless corpse to the temple, all the while seeing a part of himself in Wolf. And because of that, he decided to pass down Dogen's shinobi prosthetic to him, even going so far to give Wolf the prosthetic text, which is basically a manual teaching you how to use the prosthetic as efficiently as the sculptor could. Along with this, he also offers to help Wolf upgrade and load the prosthetic with new tools. It's almost like the sculptor is living vicariously through Wolf, and over time, the sculptor learned to open up to him, sharing stories of his past, his failures, and drinking with him. If the two had met under better circumstances, it's possible that Wolf and Orangutan would have not only been allies, but possibly friends. Though the sculptor couldn't maintain this peaceful life forever, as when the Central Army began their second coup to reclaim Ashina's land, he finally snapped. His body twisted and deformed, and the flames of hatred flowed out of him, bewitching his body and becoming a massive yokai, taking on the final title of the Demon of Hatred, a feral ape-like beast with a left arm composed entirely of coiled flames. In this state, he senselessly rampaged across Ashina, not caring who he killed in the process. Wolf learns about the demon's attack by one of the soldiers who begs him for help. If you choose to fight this demon, upon entering his boss room, you either find the demon amidst a battle with two Central Army soldiers, or he's by himself striking a Genroku Miya, which is a kabuki actor pose which expresses great hatred and anger. And during the fight, if Wolf is able to create the malcontent shinobi tool, he can play a tune on the finger whistle that staggers the demon, causing Orangutan to feel something other than hatred as he remembers his nights with Kingfisher one more time. This is obviously a reference to Father Gascoigne from Bloodborne and the music box that makes him think of his daughters mid-boss fight. And after a hard-fought battle, Wolf eventually brings down the demon, settling its soul, with its final words being, "Thank you," as Orangutan is finally freed of the shackles of hatred that he's been chained to most of his life. Now, the story of Orangutan the Shinobi seems to be slightly based on pieces of Sun Wukong, the character from Journey to the West. Not only are they both king of the monkeys and have some sort of monkey theme about them, but they both have anger problems, blatant disregard for authority, were cut down by said authority that they disregarded, both defile the Buddha in some way. Along with this, they're both kept in check by metal banners. For Sun Wukong, it's his shot crown, and for Orangutan, it's Kingfisher's ring. Even more so, they were both put under watch by the authority that cut them down, and both can become huge monsters. But finally, both are related to fire in some way, with Sun Wukong being related to the character attribute of fire in Chinese mythos, and the Demon of Hatred being a flame demon or a flame yokai. Not to mention, one of the best endings for the game is Wolf and the Child of the Rejuvenating Waters heading on their journey to the west. So it's not too out of the question to assume that Sekiro took a little bit of inspiration from, you know, like one of the most popular stories in all of Asian history. Along with this, thanks to the findings of Twitter user Richmond Lee, it seems like the Sculptor is also visually based on Gao, the one-eyed, one-armed sculptor from one of the most popular manga series in Japan, Phoenix. Which makes sense since not only is there a visual similarity between the characters, but Phoenix itself is a story based all on resurrection, which is a very similar theme to Sekiro. Also, Ho-Oh, the 5th volume of Phoenix, is widely regarded as one of the best and most popular volumes of the series. Though if you want to learn more about this, I'll link the Twitter discussion below, and he goes way more in depth than I do here. I just thought I would mention it. And thus ends the tale of Orangutan, the Sculptor and ex-shinobi of the Sunken Valley, pieced together in the order that I assumed the events took place in. Though I will say, given that Sekiro has a sort of wonky translation in places, and the openness of events makes it hard to nail down a specific timeline. If you think that there is an error regarding my telling of events, feel free to tell me below. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more videos like it in the future, I have a Patreon at patreon.com/MetiNotTheBadGuy. And if you want to sculpt the Buddha as well, the best place to do it is in front of your television screen watching a copy of Shimonetta that you can buy at buyshimonetta.com.